Hey, we're back. We're going to look at the final index that I want to kind of follow over the next, we'll say a year, just to, get to gauge it. So this is XLB. It's another spider index, and that's SPDR. So it's the ticker symbol is XLB. This index follows the material sector. And right off the bat, this chart that we're looking at, this is a quarterly chart. It started back in like 1998, and it seems to have cycles, in all honesty. And as I kind of just look at it, we could say this was the housing bubble, um, 2011. Not sure about anything happening here. 2015, again, not sure. Here is the COVID thing, and then here's kind of our recession period that kind of happened in second to third quarter of last year, 22. But overall, it is trending upwards. And so let's just slow down a little bit. Let's look at the top holdings. So XLB, the top 10 holdings, make up about 63%. And I'll be honest, I have no idea who any of these 10 stocks are. I'm assuming this is the Dow Jones Index. Is that true? Dow Inc. Uh, yeah, I really have no idea who any of these are. This big one at 18% is Lindy. Again, another company I'm very new to. So this is interesting. I feel like I'm going to learn something by following this one specifically because, again, it's just so new, and even the components that make it up, very new to it. So um, I guess I just want to say if you are um, more familiar with this stock, please let me know in the comments just what your thoughts are in terms of moving forward, in terms of a buy point, a sell point, um, or just any of these stocks. I would say Lindy in particular is something that I'm going to look at because clearly that's a big driver in this index. But with that said, let's actually look at this stock. So just right off the bat, I'm kind of curious. So we have 2008, then 3 years later in 2011, about 4 years later, 2015, 3 years later, 2018, this crash, which I don't really want to count, but we will count it. So that's about 2 years. And then most recently, 22 is another 2 years later. So I just get the sense with this index that there's a cycle that happens, whether it's 2 years to 4 years, that seems to be the range. And of course, the average is like 3 years. So the fact that it pulled back here, just my initial thoughts are it's likely going to trend upwards for the next 2 to 3 years, and then we would expect to pull back maybe 50%. If it was at, say, 16 in '09, it tracked up to 32, so it doubled, then pulled back to 23, so it lost about a quarter of that. So it goes up 2x, then that maxed, it fell back um, about 25%. Then it went from 23 up to 41, so not quite doubled, but close. Then at 42, it fell back to 34, so again about 25%. Then at 34, it climbed up to we'll say we'll say 54, so clearly not double anymore, maybe like 80%, and then it fell back to about 46, so maybe 20-ish%. And then I really don't want to count this, but we're just going to hop over. So then it was, we'll say it starts here at about 41, climbs up to about 88, so it pure double, little over doubles, but then pulls back to about 67. So again, it lost about 25%. So it seems like that's kind of a trend with this one, something that we can easily capture here. I think it's worth note that assuming that pattern kind of continues, that we were at about 67, 68, and already it's at 82, so it made up about um, 33%. So I would imagine this one has another 66% growth from this point. So assuming it doubles, we would say about 130. It's at 81. We would kind of think this one has about $50 worth of growth in the next, say, year or two. So just something to keep in mind. What I'm going to do here is just kind of chart out what it, like I wish I could do a hyperbolic type trend line. I don't know if that's even, it looks like a parallel Fibonacci. I'm not too familiar with how that works, but I do see a poly. I'm gonna try that. I don't think I've used this type of line before, but if we do a poly, I'm gonna see if this, okay, so this does do what I think it's gonna do. So this is kind of the polygraph. Okay, so let's exit. Oh crap, that's not what I wanted to do. Let me redraw that. So going back to the low back in 2019 up to here, and then going forward we have like, let me pull that back just a touch, and then we'll enter. Okay, so that's good. I'm going to draw in another polyline here, try to gather this top. We have about like here-ish. We'll actually extend it to about here, and then you can see it's shooting off. And this one's kind of tricky just because it's, I want to try to get it out ahead of it, but because it's accelerating so rapidly, it's I can't really do that well. So we'll just kind of see what it is. Let's go back to the more familiar, the weekly trend. And so this is the 3-year. This actually turned out fairly decent. I wish I could zoom out further to kind of show everything, but yeah, I just can't get this one ahead because it grew so rapidly, so quickly. But looking at the 3-year, so that's the gold line, and maybe let's actually make this purple, because purple's like the original trend line that we use. Is this grabbing? Yeah. Okay, so we'll make that purple, and then we're gonna add in a new trend line for, we'll take it back to 2020. I normally don't do that, but I am in this case. I don't know if that's fair or not, but then we'll make this one like a gold or orange, and then we'll add in another trend line. We're gonna just capture this high point up here, and just to kind of gather the most, if I were to draw this parallel, that'd be very interesting. If I drew it like parallel like here, kind of interesting to see how that would play out. Again, it's growing. We could maybe even bring this down. If we bring it down like this, that kind of gives me an idea of what to look for in future weeks. Otherwise, I mean, we could see like very strong growth. I feel like this is one that we want to actually get into. So I'm just going to at least draw in what we do know about this one. So currently it's at 81. We would actually round it to 82, but sticking to the whole numbers, it's 81. Whoop. And I'm just plugging in the date. So a buy point, again, let me just keep kind of drawing some lines in here. So if we kind of say that, I grabbed the wrong one. If we kind of say that this is the new low for this stock, and we're going to make this a black line at about 67, that seems to be the new low. We'll draw in another one, which seems to have fairly strong resistance, at least in the more recent periods, for about close to a year. It doesn't want to go above this line for whatever reason of 88. I think it will crack that very soon. And then if we look for maybe a more, Like I really like this line right in here. I feel like that might be our fair value line today, but it could be a buy point. Um, I actually might. I'm gonna make this our buy point actually at 77. I feel like that's fairly decent for this one. We could definitely get it lower, of course. Uh, the last time it was that low was mid-November, where it kind of fell back down to our black line at 67 back in like September. Um, but yeah, I mean that seems like it has solid support there. It's tested at one, two, three. I would say that's four, um, five. I don't know if we want to count. I'm not going to count that. So 5 times it tested it, but bounced back up, and then it kind of acted as resistance. I'm going to say twice. I'll count this as 2 times. Uh, so I do like that line 77. In terms of a sell point, I don't really want to put in a sell point for this one either. I guess if I had to, it would be that black line at 88. I feel like that's where we're headed to again. I know right now we are in a red bar where it's pulling back, and that's good for us in terms of making a buy. But overall, I think even in the more recent times, our gold lines that we drew in here, that is lining up pretty well with what it's doing today in the short term. In terms of, I guess, like if I do want to draw in one more line just because this point right about here, I guess. If I were to say this was like the fair value line, um, I'm I'm picking this point mainly because there was some resistance here. I would argue this was resistance too, where so we have one, two. It hung out here. I don't know if I should count it. So two, and right now it's testing it again. Here's three, and you could argue that's four or five, or at least four. And so right now we're close to that point. We're below it, so that's good. I think overall, though, it's in an uptrend. I'm going to mark that I don't like this in terms of like a sell or short type of stock. Um, this one, of course, just like some of the other indexes we've seen in the past, this one, it's clearly, it appears to me that, this one might be the best of them all, in all honesty, because the other ones that we've seen where it has this clear uptrend for long term and short term, and I'm saying short term in like a 3 year period, which I know is long term also, but when we look at the decade long uptrend and the short term 3 year uptrend, this one is unique in the fact that when like it's cyclical, and what I really like about this one is the fact that when it pulls back, it just seems very consistent in the fact that when it has this pullback outside, and I realize I guess I'm being somewhat selective because clearly there's a disaster in '08, which was the housing bubble, I believe. So clearly there can be occurrences where it doesn't follow the cycle like it seems to have been doing for the past like 13 years. But why I like this one specifically, and I don't know if my voice is showing how excited I am, but the reason why I like this one specifically is because ever since af- after '08, so we're just going to delete everything after that, and I realize that might be a little bit biased in that, but ever since that low point, every 2 or 3 years, it doubles and then pulls back about 25%. And so I just want to confirm this one more time. So for at least the first one. So it went from 16, and I guess if we don't count this one and we count this, it goes from 16 to 32, pulls back to 24. So you went up 100%, you pulled back 50%, I guess. Okay, I understand. So it goes up. So at two X's pulls back 25% overall, but in terms of gains, it pulls back 50%. You catch it at a low again, it goes up 100% roughly, pulls back 25%, which again is like a 50% gain. And so right now, if we look at it, assuming that same type of pattern, we're here at about 67 was the low, and assuming that same pattern, we'd be at 130, pulls back 25%. So let me just do some quick math here. Equal 130 uh, divided by, I guess divided by 4, equal 130 minus that. So it would pull back to 97. So I think overall it's at a pretty good spot, assuming it continues that pattern. Because again, uh, assuming that trend where it goes, where it doubles, pulls back 25%, that means if you if you bought it now and experienced that same type of pattern, then we would still be up overall. Because again, right now it's at 81. If it did that pattern where it rose really rapidly, hit that close to 2x, and then pulled back 25, we would still be up roughly $18 per share. And let's see, equal 18 divided by 82, we'd be up roughly 22% overall. That's pretty good in 2 years. And then you could hopefully buy again during that dip and see the same type of cycle. I think this one is a really good winner. It's crazy how I haven't heard anyone talk about this one. Materials in general. I showed us these top 10. Seriously, if you have any insight to any of these, I'd be very interested in hearing them. I definitely want to look at this Lindy. I think I'm going to add it to my list right now. Just a note, just so I can come back to it. I don't know where I'll put it. Probably a value type stock makes the most sense to me, but we'll look into at least Lindy since it's the biggest stock in this index fund. But overall, let's just jump back to the weekly just for a second. I think if you want to uh, kind of pinch pennies on this one, uh, wait a little bit, maybe wait a week. I think that's how I'll play this. I'm going to mark this one as an orange, which means it's close to making a move. Hopefully I don't regret that, but because the current week is red, I see in the after hours it's actually going up a little bit. But overall, I just want to see if I can catch this a little bit later. But honestly, there's a good chance I'll probably add it this week just because, uh, I don't know, $4 per share is not crazy, especially considering if it's going to continue to grow for the next like year or two. And yes, I realize there's, it fluctuates here, and so maybe I can be a little more patient. Uh, yeah, we'll be a little patient on this. We'll wait till it comes back to 77 because I do believe it will, and that's still within our upward trend. The more recent kind of uptrend here in the past like 6 months. Yeah, I think I will be a little patient on this one, but let me kind of share what we did here. So we have XLB index here. So the current price is 81. My buy point for this would be 77. It's very close. So if you'd want to just buy it now and forget about it, not worry about missing an opportunity that it might rise rapidly over the next couple weeks, now's a decent time. But if you are patient and you can circle back with maybe every 2 or 3 days or maybe once a week, I think we have a chance to catch this one at a lower point, and hopefully we can get it at 77. But and then of course I marked this X because I just don't think this is one that you would want to sell at. Uh, I realize you can you can catch this one. It does seem like it's in cycle, so you probably could switch at some point. I don't know if I would actually. It's something to think about. I think we just happened to catch this one at a decent point where if we go back to the quarters, I think we just experienced the drop. And so, based on the cycles that we're seeing, we're likely going to see about 2, maybe 3 years of growth. Once we see, I would say, once we see, I guess the trouble with this one is when it falls very rapidly in just one quarter. That's the issue. Is can you catch it? I realize this one actually took place over 3 quarters, one very small window, and then it just dropped like crazy, and then it continued to drop even further, probably than a lot of people thought it would. So this one, you you probably had a little more time to kind of prepare and shift funds around, but prior to this, everything kind of happened in essentially one quarter, and that's going to be the issue. Uh, I guess it'll just depend on if we go to monthly. I'd be curious about that too. Can we stretch this out over months? So if we kind of see, so monthly, it does seem to kind of track monthly. It's it is pretty spread out, except for this more recent one where it does kind of scatter. It seems like that third month is the worst, and this is the 30th. Um, this one, it's always the month before earnings, it seems like, and then once earnings come out, it rebounds pretty rapidly that next month. So that is something to keep in mind, and that even kind of happened here where it dropped significantly. The next month, it popped right back up and grew very fast the next 2 months. So I think this is one that is very cyclical, and we can catch this one pretty easily. Um, Again, we're at that point where it's probably time to buy. And yes, I realize on a monthly basis it could be flat for a couple months, but the overall quarter, the 3 month period, it's likely going to keep going up and up and up for probably about a year, maybe a year and a half. And then if it starts to pull back, that might be our signal that, okay, we should probably get out of this one. But we'll keep tracking this one. We'll see how it turns out. Uh, so if you enjoy this, and again, if you have any interest in this one, and just know more about it than me, because that should be very easy to do, because I really don't know any of these stocks in this index. I would very much like to hear what your thoughts are on this. But overall, I hope you enjoyed it. Please like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.